Good morning, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming out today. This is the first of our 50th anniversary coffee chat sessions. Next week will be Paul Trippi, our new mountain manager, and the week following that will be Steve Fuller, who will be discussing the new aerial adventure park that will open this spring. So again, I'm pleased and happy that you guys came out today, and I'm really very excited to present Mr. Sarkis. I've always heard a lot about him in my 5 years here, but in preparation for this presentation, we got to spend some time together. And I'm thrilled to tell you that this is a guy that, when we look at the mountain and see Bristol Mountain as it is today, you got to remember that prior to 1964, Mr. Sarkis, Mr. DeMars, and Mr. Atkin looked up and saw what the vision of what you're seeing today. So these visionaries are phenomenal in what they dreamed back in the day. And Fred is going to talk to you about what really inspired that dream, not only from his adult experiences, but his childhood experiences, which are very interesting. So without further ado, Mr. Fred Sarkis.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Just before the meeting began, a couple of former Kodak folks stopped and said they remembered the days when they were drinking coffee at 5 cents a cup at Kodak. And what we're looking at today, thanks to the good work of Dan Fuller and his team, we're looking at what a 5 cent cup of coffee led to. It's kind of amazing as I sit here and watch the snowmaking. It's quite a thrill. Some of the talk that I plan to give is kind of in writing, and I was kind of getting nervous because I'm 87 and I wondered how my memory would serve me well. But what I want to do especially today is remember some of the old timers who were here 50 years ago. And maybe some of you remember them, or some of you are too young to remember. Anyway, there was a Joe Kohler and my brother-in-law Bill Nealon. Larry DeMars was the co-founder, and he was the General Motors mechanical engineer. Ron Ratnick, also a co-founder, was the electrical engineer. Eddie Shank, a lot of folks here must remember Eddie. He was in charge of keeping the lodge clean, and according to his name, Sarge, you better keep it clean. Then there was Jim Cooper, and Jim would fall asleep in the pump house, and his helpers would put snow down the back of his open pants. My son Greg shared that with me a little while ago. And there's Brent Gillette, who kept a good eye on the lifts and make sure that folks really were allowed to ski without sneaking in somehow. And then there was, God rest his soul, Kenny Keenan. I'm guessing that 50 years of service that he gave to the mountain. Sam Hange, Art Klein was the mountain manager. Steve Howie, he's my ski instructor. I hope he's my ski instructor, is what I hear. Steve, I guess you taught me how to ski. Rich Copeland, Rich Parker, Clara Fox. Grooming was Leo Ginesco. And Larry Newbrook was called the GOAT, and he was the mechanic. And Bert Wasson was food and beverage. And Corky Caton, Tom German, Franz Mittelmar. And to the best of my memory, that represents some of the good folks who worked here. I was going to try to, because of my age factor, I was going to try to read what I wanted to talk about, but right now I think I'll just have to wing it. It's kind of a thrill for me to stand here and look out at the unbelievable snowmaking. And I cannot emphasize as much as I wish to the unbelievable good work of Dan Fuller and his team. So Dan and the entire team at Bristol Mountain, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be 87 and to see how nothing is the same. I mean, all the chairs are gone, the old ones. You know, thank goodness the lodge hung on to its the good work of the architect. My heart beats for the contributions the mountain and Bristol Harbor have made to the total community, not only in jobs, but in recreation, which is, we used to have a sign here at the beginning, and we called it recreation was the refreshment of spirit. What do you do when you lose a mountain? Or what do you do in your life when you've lost something that you worked so hard to build? Well, you kind of have two choices. You can become a victim of disappointment and self-pity, or you can find other opportunities to turn disappointment into success. My father died of a heart attack at the age of 54, and it was related to high blood pressure. So when I was 54, coping with financial losses at the mountain, as well as Bristol Harbor, a close business associate of mine in my coin-operated vending machine days phoned me about a coin-operated blood pressure machine that was being used in malls throughout the United States. I was successful in signing up several malls in Western New York, and it was a huge hit. The coin-operated sales averaged $500 a month, but they went from $500 a month to $50 a month, and it turned out to be a failure, and I had to return the machines to a former coffee distributor in Baltimore, and I had a failure on my hands, another one. In 1987, I was told that a dealer in Washington, state of Washington, got rid of the coin operation and decided to rent these machines to pharmacies. And I'm proud to say that I have 3 sons who are now in the business, and collectively they have 8,200 units in pharmacies throughout Canada and the US, and they test 330,000 individuals a day. That's 11 million blood pressure tests a year. A few years later, I re-entered the food and vending business, and I recovered the losses that I experienced at the mountain and at the harbor. So it's kind of like, what's life all about? We will run into failures, and as I tell the kids when I give talks, what do you do with failure? You know, you can either drown yourself in self-pity, or you can embrace your failure and learn from it and go on. So at 87, as I look back, I rejoice in thinking that someone took my ventures and with outstanding management turned them into remarkable success, and indeed, Bristol Mountain and Bristol Harbor are outstanding successes. I want to thank all of you for being here, and we're supposed to allow time for questions. So, thank you. 1964, Mount Tom in Holyoke, Massachusetts, was the only area making snow. And it's a quick story there, I think I left it in one of the readings. This is really funny. I thought, before I make this investment with these 2 engineers from General Motors, I better take a 2-week vacation. I better go up to Vermont. I better visit every ski area. And it was, I remember Mount Snow. I don't remember the name of the owner. But the only time that he had was to meet me in a hot tub. So there we are sitting in the hot tub. He said, yeah, well, what's this all about? And I said, well, I've got a couple of engineers from General Motors, and we're thinking of building a ski area in up in my neck of the woods, south of Rochester, New York. And he said, "What for?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to bring skiing closer to our community." He said, "What's your average snowfall there?" And I said, "Oh, about 84 inches. And then he said, "I don't want to waste my time with you." He said, "Here you are with all this money and you want to go in the ski business? I'm out of here." So he got out of the hot tub and he left. And that was his attitude. But not too far from there was Mount Tom. It was kind of a small community, and the guy was in the construction business, and he had all this equipment, and he was making snow. And in the winter and in the summer, of course, his equipment would be used for construction purposes. But I thought that was quite humorous because he thought I was an idiot, and he walked out of that hot tub. But at Mount Tom, it reassured me that there was at least a start in snowmaking. And Ron Radnick and Larry DeMars, it's remarkable. I don't know if you all know this, but they went on to become the nation's leaders in providing snowmaking services for other skiers throughout the U.S. And I wish Larry DeMars and Ron Radnick were here today because they certainly deserve a round of applause for their determination to make this happen. Any other questions? Yes. What role did my faith play in my resilience? A lot. It's kind of like we all give, whatever we do in our lives, we give it our best effort. And many times we're disappointed and we don't get what we want. Or we have situations in family that are sad and disappointing. And my faith taught me to do what I said before. You embrace those failures. You learn from those failures. You don't give up. You hang in there. And you trust in God. I'm not supposed to speak about God, for example, in public schools. I can speak about God in Catholic schools. So it was, I'm trying to remember, the school was in one of the local schools. One of the kids raised their hand and said, "Mr. Sarkis, you haven't spoken about God at all." And I said, "Well, my talks are not related to God, and in public schools, one is not supposed to preach." Then I reached for my wallet, and I pulled out a $5 bill. And on the back of it, it said, "In God we trust." And I said, "Well, maybe this is the answer." And I gave that student the $5 bill, and the teacher a year later said, "Man, that student had that $5 bill framed." So I hope that answers your question. Well, when I drove all the way from Rochester from Ambassador Drive, and suddenly I was on the chairlift with Bob, I just thought, hey, this is unreal. And to spend 80 minutes with him one-on-one, and he picked my brain, he found out everything that I've just told you, and he was just amazed that I would suddenly turn my past ventures into a ski area with the help of so many people. So in that conversation, he learned that I was in the food service business. He learned that I ran a tight ship. He learned that when people dropped something off to one of the cafeterias, it was very important that if you paid so much a pound for chicken, that you weren't paying for ice. A lot of suppliers would put ice into the chicken, they'd weigh it, so you might have been paying so many pounds for the ice. Anyway, I found myself talking about that, and he said, well, what is it you think you'd like to do with the rest of your life? I said, I'd like to be in charge of the food service programs, the food donation programs, to make sure it gets to the needy rather than swallowed up by middlemen. As you well know, you're reading the paper, sometimes the things that we try to do for others never get to the people they are intended for. He said, I will remember that conversation. And I think it was 18 months or 2 years later that he was assassinated. So I wouldn't be here today, I think, if Bob Kennedy were still alive, and I would have put all my skills and talent into making sure that that food got to the people it was intended for, with a lot of corruption in between. Oh yeah, it was certainly a big challenge. Particularly, I think Ron and Larry, I don't know where they were, 25 or 6? Can anybody help me with that? I think they were about 25 and 26. So, and I was 30. So, yeah, I think I think I had a lot of confidence that, based on my trip to Mount Tom, based on the fact that Ron was a electrical engineer and Larry was a mechanical engineer, and you know what? It was a miracle how they started in the spring. No ski area operator that I've met in my travels in this business, none of them could believe that you could start in the spring with underground snowmaking, underground pipes, underground wiring for lights, and make something like this happen. So, you know, really, standing next to me today, we should have Larry DeMars and the co-founders and Ron Ratnick, who, by the way, became the world's leaders in snowmaking after they left Bristol Mountain. Well, why did we take this spot? Because this is the land that Larry DeMars bought. So it started with that. That's just a good question. It started with Larry DeMars having enough foresight and vision to buy the mountain. That's how it all started. Pouring concrete a hard time. You know what? But I do know this, that they called me in Rochester and said, Fred, we're going to start the chairlift. Come on down. So I drove down, and the original chairlift started running up, and Larry DeMars started to cry. And I said, Larry, why are you crying? And he said, I was afraid it was going to fall down. And I thought to myself, I'm glad he didn't tell me that before. Harnish and Lookup is a great name for me to remember because Harnish and Lookup were also the engineers to build Bristol Mountain. And I don't know if any of you how many of you have been down to the beach frontage at Bristol Mountain? I mean, Bristol Harbor. Well, there's that wonderful, there's a yacht, the Marina Yacht Club parking area, and Larry DeMars knew of a bridge that was being cut down. So he got the steel, these huge steel beams, you know, that support those buildings. He got them from a bridge that was torn down, saved an awful lot of money, and with the help of Harnish and Lookup, Harnish and Lookup deserves a big round of applause for some of the engineering achievements that they cooperated with both Bristol Mountain and Bristol Harbor. So I want to thank you very much.
Before Fred gets away, I just wanted to show our appreciation. We're just thrilled that he could come down and share some of these memories with us. So first of all, we think it's fitting that he gets one of the 50th anniversary ball caps since he started this place. So there you go.
Wow.
And then secondly, I've had a great pleasure of being able to go back through a lot of archive photos in the last couple of years getting ready for this celebration. And so what I'd like to give to you, Fred, is just kind of a recap of some of the pictures that I came across in doing this exercise. And there's one of you in RFK on the chair left. So I'll let you guys take a look. So it's the original base area with the full deck around, the picture of Fred with RFK, some of the original snowmaking equipment, some of the original ski instructors, which I don't think you mentioned, came from Austria. And so this was quite unique back in the day when he started Bristol Mountain. There really wasn't a lot of skiing or instructors in the area, so they actually imported instructors from Austria. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for sharing your experience with us.
Oh, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Very good.
Okay. All right.